And
Obviously, the design of the system had to have been done before Claude Code, Codex, OpenClaw. So you were anticipating the future, essentially.
yeah,
And that comes from what? From the whispers, from the understanding what all the state of the art is doing.
no, it's easier than that. You just reason about it. First of all, you just reason. Uh, no matter what happens, at some point, in order for that large language model to be a digital worker, let's just use that metaphor. Let's say that we want the LLM to be a digital worker. What does it have to do? It has to access ground truth. That's our file system. It has to be able to do research. It doesn't know everything. We don't have, and I don't want to wait until this AI becomes, universally smart about everything, past, present, and future, before I make it useful. And so therefore, I might as well let it go do research. It's obviously, if it wants to help me, it's got to use my tools. A lot of people would say, you know, AI is going to completely destroy software. We don't need software anymore. We don't even need tools anymore. That's ridiculous. Let's use a thought experiment. And you could just sit there, enjoy a glass of whiskey, and think about all these things, and it would become completely obvious. Like if I were to create the most amazing agent that we can imagine in the next 10 years, let's say be a humanoid robot. If that humanoid robot were to be created, is it more likely that the humanoid robot comes into my house and uses the tools that I have to do the work that it needs to do? Or does this hand turns into a 10-pound hammer in one instance, turns into a scalpel in another instance, and in order to boil water, it beams, microwaves out of its fingers, or is it more likely just to use a microwave, And the first time it goes up to the microwave, it probably doesn't know how to use it, but that's okay. It's connected to the internet. It reads the manual of this microwave, reads it, instantly becomes an expert, and so uses it. And so I think I just described, in fact, almost all of the properties of OpenClaw. That it's going to use tools, that it's going to access files, it's going to be able to do research. It has I/O subsystem, and when you're done reasoning about it through it in that way, then you say, "Oh my gosh, the impact to the future computing is deeply profound." And the reason for that is, I think we've just reinvented the computer. And then now you say, okay, when did we reason about that? When did we reason about OpenClaw? If you take the OpenClaw schematic that I used at GTC, you will find it 2 years ago. Literally 2 years ago at GTC, I was talking about agentic systems that exactly reflect OpenClaw today. And of course, the confluence of many things had to happen. First of all, we needed Claude and GPT and all of these models to reach a level of capability. So their innovation and their breakthroughs and their continued advances was really important. And then, of course, somebody had to create an open source project that was sufficiently robust, and sufficiently complete, and that we can all put to work. And I think OpenClaw did for agentic systems what ChatGPT did for generative systems, and I just think it's a very big deal.
Yeah, it's a really special moment. I'm not exactly sure why it captured so much of the world's attention, but it did, more than Claude Code and Codex and so on.
Because consumers could reach it.
Sure, yeah. But there's also so much of this is vibes, and Peter, I had a podcast with him. He's a wonderful human being. So part of it is also the humans that represent the thing, and
no doubt.
part of it is memes and because we're all trying to figure it out. There's really serious and complicated security concerns about when you have such powerful technology. How do you hand over your data so they can do useful stuff? But then there's scary things associated with that. And we as a civilization, as individual people, and as a civilization, figuring out how to find that right balance.
Yeah, we jumped on it right away, and we sent a bunch of security experts this way, and we did this thing called OpenShell. It's already been integrated into OpenClaw.
And NVIDIA put forward NemoClaw.
Yeah, exactly.
The install is super easy. It makes sure that it's secure.
We give you 2 out of 3 rights. Agentic systems can access sensitive information. it can execute code, and it can communicate externally.
Mhm.
We could keep things safe if we gave you 2 out of those 3 capabilities at any time, but not all 3. And out of those 2 out of 3 capabilities, we also give you access control based on whatever rights that you're given by enterprise. And then we connect it to a policy engine that all these enterprises already have. And so we're going to try to do our best to help OpenClaw become a better claw.
So you eloquently explained how we have a long history of blockers that we thought were going to be blockers and we overcame them. But now looking into the future, what do you think might be the blockers? Now that it's clear that agents will be everywhere. So it's obviously we're going to need compute. So what is going to be the blocker for that scaling?
Power is a concern, but it's not the only concern. But that's the reason why we're pushing so hard on extreme co-design, so that we can improve the tokens per second per watt orders of magnitude every single year. And so in the last 10 years, Moore's Law would have progressed computing about 100 times in the last 10 years. We progressed and scaled up computing by 1,000,000 times in the last 10 years. And so we're going to keep on doing that through extreme co-design. So energy efficiency, perf per watt, completely affects the revenues of a company. It affects the revenues of a factory. And we're just going to push that to the limit so that we can keep on driving token costs down as fast as we can. Our computer price is going up, but our token generation effectiveness is going up so much faster that token cost is coming down. It's coming down an order of magnitude every year.
So power, that's an interesting one. So the way to try to get around the power blocker is to try to, with the tokens per second per watt, try to make it more and more efficient. Of course, there's the question of how do we get more power?
We should also get more power.
That's a really complicated one. You've talked about small modular nuclear power plants. There's all kinds of ideas for energy. How much does it keep you up at night? The bottlenecks in the supply chain of AI, like ASML with EUV lithography machines, TSMC with advanced packaging like CoWoS, and SK Hynix with high bandwidth memory.
All the time. And we're working on it all the time. No company in history has ever grown at a scale that we're growing while accelerating that growth. It's incredible.
Yeah.
And it's hard for people to even understand this. In the overall world of AI computing, we're increasing share. And so supply chain, upstream and downstream, are really important to us. I spent a lot of time informing all the CEOs that I work with, what are the dynamics that's going to cause the growth to continue or even accelerate. It's part of the reasons why, to the entire right-hand side of me, we're CEOs of practically the entire IT industry upstream and practically the entire infrastructure industry downstream.
Mm-hmm.
And there were several hundred CEOs. And I don't think there's ever been keynotes where several hundred CEOs show up. And part of it is I'm telling them about our business condition now. I'm telling them about the growth drivers in the very near future and what's happening. And I'm also describing where are we going to go next so that they could use all of this information and all of the dynamics that are here to inform how they want to invest. And so I inform them that way, like I inform my own employees. And then, of course, then I make trips out to them and make sure that, hey, listen, I want you to know this quarter, this coming year, this next year, these things are going to happen. And if you look at the CEOs of the DRAM industry, the number one DRAM in the world was DDR memory for CPUs in data centers. About 3 years ago, I was able to convince several of the CEOs that even though at the time HBM memory was used quite scarcely, and barely by supercomputers, that this was going to be a mainstream memory for data centers in the future. And at first it sounded ridiculous, but several of the CEOs believed me and decided to invest in building HBM memories. Another memory was rather odd to put into a data center is the low power memories that we use for cell phones. And we wanted them to adapt them for supercomputers in the data center. And they go, cell phone memory for supercomputers?
Mm-hmm.
And I explained to them why. Well, look at these two memories, LPDDR5, HBM4. The volumes are so incredible. All three of them had record years in history, and these are 45-year companies. And so, that's part of my job, is to inform and shape, inspire,
So you're not just manifesting the future and maybe inspiring NVIDIA, the different engineers of the company. You're manifesting the supply chain of the future. So you're having conversations with TSMC, with ASML,
upstream, downstream,
downstream. So that's the thing.
GEV, Caterpillar. Yeah, that's downstream from us.
Yeah.
Yeah. There you go.
The whole thing. I mean, but
Yeah.
there's so much incredibly difficult engineering that happens in the entire semiconductor industry. And it just feels scary how intricate the supply chain is, how many components there are, but it works somehow.
Exactly. The deep science, the deep engineering, the incredible manufacturing, and so much of the manufacturing is already robotics. But we have a couple of hundred suppliers that contribute the technology that goes into our 1.3 million component rack.
Mm-hmm.
Each rack is 1.5 million components. There are 200 suppliers across the Vera Rubin rack.